in China. A new book by a Chinese-born academic argues that China is a more communist state-controlled government today than it was 20 years ago. And the author says, quote, "I am deeply worried about China's economy. Those people laughing at the West should save their laughter for next year when they may be laughing at themselves." Joining us now, Steve Orlins. He's from the National Committee on U.S.-China Relations. He's also former Lehman Brothers Asia president, and we're welcoming him tonight. He's in a tuxedo because he's playing host to the Treasury Secretary Paulson tonight. So, sir, what do you think of this idea that China might be the next economic crisis to erupt?
I thought you required black tie for these interviews now. Yes, I'll be hosting Secretary Paulson in about 30 minutes. Is China more capitalist than more communist than it was 20 years ago? Absolutely not. That the majority of the Chinese economy is not state-owned. So I think that premise is a rather faulty one. And when you say there's going to be an international crisis, I mean, China is in it's a relative statement. Compared to the United States, Europe, and Japan, it's in much better shape. But are they going to have a slowdown? Is their rate of growth going to slow down? Absolutely.
That's the key. Eric and I were talking yesterday. I freaked everybody out when I said I think China's GDP could go negative in 2009. I think they're a high beta version of our economy, and our economy is imploding around us. Can you talk about what the possibility is? Am I on crack thinking that it could be down next year?
That they'd actually have economic contraction like the United States is going to have? That I would say that's virtually impossible.
Why so?
What you'll have is because they're growing at about, well, they've been growing at 11%. Today's figures say they're now growing at 9%.
But we've gone from 40 down to 30 to 20
no.
It was
the highest it ever was at 11.9. So it's at 9. It's going to slow further. I think its rate of growth is going to slow further. But don't forget, the Chinese government has a lot more tools at its disposal than the U.S. government has. We have these extraordinary both trade deficits and budget deficits. The Chinese government has trade surpluses and budget surpluses. So they have the ability to prime the pump.
They also own a lot of our debt, and they stopped buying it. Holy mackerel, watch out. Go ahead, Eric.
And I think that, by the way, that's what we're going to discuss tonight when Secretary Paulson is here, that the Chinese, holding about $1.2 trillion of our debt, of Fannie, Freddie, and Treasury debt, have behaved very well during this crisis, that they really have stood with us. And
they're scaling back their purchases, though, right?
They are continuing to purchase. There is no question they're continuing to purchase.
Go ahead, Eric.
Very, very important. Something came out over the weekend. The Chinese government, in the Chinese newspapers, basically blamed the United States for the global crisis in credit, the global turndown. Is Hank Paulson worried about that? Is he worried about a U.S.-China relationship freezing over?
I mean, there's always rhetoric in the United States that's very anti-China, and I think Secretary Paulson worries about that.
This was the Chinese government blaming the West, and specifically the United States.
No, it's not the official. In other words, there are always people in think tanks and in other places who will blame the United States for stuff. But the Chinese government policy has been to really be very supportive of the United States. And so, yes, it is a crisis. And have we been the cause of it? Well, we have partly been the cause of it. We need to take responsibility.
My worst-case scenario for China is if it does turn down, whether it's just a little bit or it actually goes negative, and they end up with some serious, harsh economic times, society starts uprising. Is it possible that they nationalize everything that we've put in over there? All of Caterpillar's factories, Corning's factories, anybody who's opened up over there? Is there any chance that they end up throwing up walls?
No. Really, I think that China's commitment to reform and opening, which started 30 years ago, is permanent. I don't think we're going to.
Getting back to Joe Biden's quote, what do we think Joe Biden was referring to?
That there's going to be an international crisis
to test the mettle of a President Obama.
Well, I think there is an international crisis right now.
No, he's saying a new one is going to crop up.
This one is going to continue. That I think that the steps that have been taken are palliatives, that it's going to delay it, but then if the Obama administration comes in, I believe that they will confront serious financial and economic problems.
Okay.
That the downturn, the financial crisis is today. The economic crisis, we're going to have contraction,
I hear you,
significant contraction in the fourth quarter.
No, Lizzie, I just wanted to, a lot of people are saying that he was referring to a possible terror act, and if that were the case, is he inciting some sort of terror activity to take place? It has nothing to do with China. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have jumped in there.
But China is not going to contract.
And it's also not going to go harsh against America. It's not going to turn into another enemy.
I mean, we could behave in such a way. The great risk is we can behave in such a way that we can create an enemy. I mean, you can always create an enemy, but certainly that is not. That is not.
I feel a little bit better.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Steve. Have fun tonight. We wish you the best of luck. Thank you so much for joining us.